Hey guys, I'm Ted and I'm here to give you another fast fact. And for today's fast fact, we will discuss Thomas Jefferson and the Embargo Act of 1807. Now, just to give you a little bit of background on this, during Jefferson's presidency, perhaps the greatest calamity that he ever had to deal with was the recurring Anglo-Franco wars. Great Britain and France had been contesting each other since the end of the 17th century, the late 1600s. They've been contesting each other for supremacy in Europe, for supremacy in the colonies, and at this point, it was really just their competition and different ideologies. The ideas of the French Revolution were really just too shocking, really just too strange for the British elite at the time. And Great Britain has served as a fundamental member of the international coalitions that were attempting to bring down the French Republic, that were attempting to defeat the French Revolution. Now, these wars were once again pushing the envelope, and they were attempting to drag the United States into the contest. Really, between 1803 and 1807, over 800 American ships were seized by both French and British forces on the seas. The British had taken to impressment, that is, stopping American ships on the sea, demanding to search the ships, and then singling out people at random and proclaiming these men to be English citizens who were serving in the King's fleet and had at some point deserted, but had now been found, had been identified, and were being put back into service for the King. Now, all of these actions drove the Americans wild with anger, and in particular, Jefferson was upset about this. And to sort of deal with this, he decided to enact an embargo, a boycott, an international boycott of both Great Britain and France. Now, the reason he chose an embargo instead of war was that he had scuttled the Navy. He had cut the Navy and relied totally on a gunboat flotilla for coastal defense of the United States. Now, given the many rivers and inlets on the American Atlantic seaboard, it really wasn't that bad of an idea. But when you're sending your ships across the Atlantic Ocean or into the Caribbean, you'd like frigates. You'd like frigates or sloops or man of wars to protect them. And with scuttling the Navy, Jefferson had removed that option for the Americans. So his only recourse was to attempt to use trade, was to attempt to use the very lucrative American trade as an inducement for the British and the French to stop their actions. And it failed. The embargo hurt the Americans way more than it ever did the British. Jefferson didn't really realize that American agricultural products, they found the best markets in Great Britain and in France. They were the primary supplier of American goods. And on the inverse, Great Britain and France was also the primary supplier of American imports, and particularly Great Britain. Great Britain was the chief trading partner of the United States. Enacting an embargo against Great Britain was economic suicide. From an early 19th century, that is, an early 1800 perspective. Now, when Congress approved the Embargo Act, American exports were valued at roughly 108 million. After the Embargo Act went into effect, that number fell spectacularly. It fell by almost 75%. It dropped all the way to 22 million. And imports plummeted as well. Imports were actually higher. Imports were valued at about 138 million, and import revenue fell to 57 million. Just spectacular drops for the federal government, spectacular drops for the state governments, for the merchants, and more importantly for the agriculturalists. You're losing the primary markets. You're losing your primary sources of income. And in particular, the Embargo Act was particularly devastating to merchants, sailors, and anyone involved in any sort of maritime commerce. Those guys really felt the sting of the Embargo Act the most. And that's our fat fact for today, the Embargo Act. I hope you guys found it a bit entertaining, a bit enlightening, and I hope you guys learned something from it. As always, I'm Ted, and I'll be back next time to give you guys another fast fact.